Hey everybody, Yankee here. I live in the state of Washington, as many of you already know. And I have never been more ashamed than I am right now of the politicians in Washington. It seems that they are right now trying to make it illegal for poor people, and not just poor people, but anybody that isn't wealthy, part of the elite, and especially minorities, to own firearms. And you might be saying to yourself right now, well, how could they do something so blatantly racist and discriminatory, so classist? How could they get away with that? How could they even pretend they're serving the people? Well, they don't worry about serving the people. You got to remember, most of these politicians in Olympia are sucking at the Bloomberg teat, at the anti-gun money. The big anti-gun money groups in this country fund a lot of their campaigns, so they do their bidding. And right now, they're trying to pass HB 1504. Which says if you own firearms, you have to prove that you are financially responsible, that you can actually afford to own those guns. And you have to keep $25,000 worth of insurance for every gun you own. You can have one big policy that you pay for from a company, or you can self-insure. But like I said, if you self-insure, you have to have $25,000 per gun. Meaning if you have 10 guns, that's $250,000. If you have 100 guns, that's $2,500,000. And I don't know how many people that have that aren't wealthy. Even if you just have 2 guns, how many people have $50,000 in cash sitting in the bank in an account that they can't touch? It has to be one of those set-aside accounts, blind accounts that you can't take the money out of. That's the only way it can be secured. So how many people do you know, if they just own 2 guns, like you have a shotgun and a hunting rifle? How many people do you know that have $50,000 in cash just sitting aside? So blatantly, this law is saying, if you're not rich, you can't own guns. And especially this will target minorities, because minorities are more so in that position. How many minorities do you know that can afford that? This state is blatantly trying to make it to where only wealthy people can own guns. And they're trying to do it in a way, well, we're just asking people to prove they're responsible. Well, what other right do you have, other than your Second Amendment right, where people ask you to prove that you're responsible? This is just like, there's no difference between this and back when they used to say, well, everybody gets to vote, but you have to own land. That was their way of saying, well, we don't want poor people having a say in government, and we definitely don't want black people having a say in government, so we're just going to put this monetary requirement on voting. That'd be like saying, well, yeah, you can have free speech, but, you have to have a net worth of at least $1 million before you have free speech. That's exactly what they're doing here. Nothing other than just discriminating based on race, economic class, etc. They're saying that only these people do we want to have guns. Because the people like Giffords and Bloomberg, etc., they rely on guns to protect them, and they want to build their own little private armies to protect themselves, and they want to be able to have guns themselves, but they don't want those poor people to have guns. Because they know that eventually the time's going to come when it's time to eat the rich, and they don't want that happening. They want it to be a bunch of unarmed peasants at the gate, not armed peasants. That's why the kings took the pitchforks and the swords away from a lot of the peasants. Because when they came to the gates, they wanted them to be easy to pick off. And that's what they're doing in the state of Washington right now. Passing this law under the guise of, well, you got to have insurance. And keep in mind, this is the same state that outlawed insurance just not too long ago, a few years back. I used to have insurance for carry so that I would be covered in a negligent discharge situation or something like that, or a civil case, criminal case. And they said, no, you can't have that. You can't have insurance that would protect you from something like this. And now they're saying you got to have it if you want to own guns. And not only do you got to have it, you got to have this excessively expensive policy, or you got to have this much cash in the bank. In other words, you got to be one of us. You got to be one of the elite before you can own guns in the state of Washington. Because most wealthy people, they have that kind of cash set aside. They put their money aside in these secured accounts, these investment accounts that they can't touch till a certain time because they want to avoid taxes, etc. So they already have the money sitting there, so it's not going to affect them. Now, of course, they will exclude things like IRAs and 401ks, things like that, because, well, they don't want common people to have money sitting aside that counts. So it's got to be certain types of like bonds, securities, etc., cash, etc., which wealthy people won't have a problem with. Poor people will, especially minorities. Not because of their color, but just because of the socioeconomic status in a lot of these communities. So that's what they're trying to do. And of course, they ignore the fact that how is that going to stop any crime? What criminal, professional criminal, is going to say, well, I would have a gun, but I can't afford the taxes. I can't afford to pay the fees. I can't go down to the courthouse and register. And plus, if you're setting an amount of money you have to have for each gun, well, then guess what they need to know? They need to know how many guns you have. So this law right there, just in its existence, gives them a right to say, well, at any time we need to know, do you have enough cash set aside? Do you have enough insurance? So we have to come to your home, surprise inspection, and see how many guns you have. And if you don't have enough guns, well, then we're going to levy penalties against you. And what do we do when we level penalties? Well, the only choice we'll have is to take collateral to cover your fees until you pay them. So we'll take your guns. And it'll probably become like drugs. And if you get caught with guns in your house that you don't have insured, they'll seize your property, your house, your land, like they do with drugs. This is the first step to that. That's not a slippery slope argument. That's just the next logical step. If they need to know how many you have so that they can see how much you need to have in your bank account, well, then they have to have a means to know how many you have. And that's going to require inspections. And since they know a lot of people will hide things, if it's an announced inspection, that's going to require unannounced inspections. That's fascism. And that's what they're trying to do in the state of Washington. So it's even worse than just discriminating against poor people and minorities. It's giving them the authority to come to your home, see what you got. And if you aren't meeting their standard of responsibility, seize your property. Maybe even take your home, your cars, your land. Because that's where it would lead. And that's what they want. They want people who are not wealthy in this country to have no rights. It is not just about the Second Amendment. It's about the fact that this country has become all about the 1%. Everyone serves the 1%. They're all owned by the 1%. All the politicians, all the businesses, all the banks, etc. And this is just another step in making sure that the peasants can never revolt.